Hey everyone, it's Mrs. MacPhail. Your objective today, there's two of them. Number one, I can compare positive and negative numbers. Number two, I can solve word problems that use positive and negative numbers. So the first thing we're going to do today is take a look at our number line because we've spent a lot of time working with numbers 0 or greater, meaning Hi everyone, it's Mrs. MacPhail. Today your objectives, there's two of them. Number one, I can compare positive and negative numbers. Number two, I can solve word problems that use positive and negative numbers. We're going to start with the number line today, and most of our time has been spent looking at numbers that are 0 or greater, meaning that they go on and on forever in the positive direction. So those are called the positive numbers, and we associate them with a little plus sign. However, today we're going to be looking at negative numbers, meaning that they fall to the left of 0 on the number line, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller the further left that you go. Even though the numbers are getting bigger, or the digits are getting bigger, as you go further to the left, the value of those digits gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Opposite to that, if you go greater, on the positive side, our numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So think of 0 as a beginning point, that neutral ground. And then depending if you go right or left, you either go positive or negative. Numbers to the left of 0 are less. Numbers to the right of 0 are greater. Let's take a look at some problems down below. Remember our little alligator mouths and our equal sign? Let's see if we can figure this out. Use our number line to help us. 5 or negative 9? Which is greater? Here's 5, positive 5. And notice that we have that little minus sign in front of the 9. That means a negative 9. So we know that it's going to be in the negative, and oh, there's negative 9 right there. That's a really small number compared to, or it's a smaller value, I should say, compared to a 5 positive. So do you remember when we draw our alligator mouths, we put 2 dots on the bigger side, and then we put 1 dot on the smaller number side, and then we draw our alligator mouths because the alligator wants to eat the bigger number. Chomp. So 5 is greater than negative 9. Negative 1 compared to positive 1. Now I don't have a positive sign in front of that, and sometimes you won't see a positive sign, but sometimes you will. So let's find positive 1 and let's find negative 1. Here's positive 1, and here's negative 1. So we know that positive 1 is going to be greater. My alligator mouth, draw my line, the smaller number eats the bigger number. Chomp. Go ahead and see if you can do the last one. Here's negative 7, here's negative 10. Negative 7 is more to the right than negative 10, so negative 7 is going to be the bigger value. Even though that negative 10 looks to be a bigger number, it's further left, so it's way smaller. In real life, we use negative numbers all the time. Thermometers have positive and negative numbers too. Maybe you've had those school days where it's been 20 below and you've heard mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or the weather people say, it's 50 below today. What are they talking about? Well, our temperatures can go below 0. Here's a nice little chart for you. In the US, we use the Fahrenheit thermometer. You'll also hear about the Celsius thermometer. But we know that freezing is at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. If you go below that, you get the negative numbers, and above that, you get the positive numbers. So we know it's kind of like the positive numbers are warmer. If you go way, 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 way high, you get really, really hot. And if you go below 0, they get really, 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 really cold. Now, you can kind of think of your thermometer just like the number line. If you were to turn it sideways, you'd have your negative numbers on the left and your positive numbers on the right. Remember that 0 is that neutral starting point. Positive numbers go to the right, negative numbers go to the left. Let's take a look at a question here. What temperature is colder? -5 degrees Celsius or -10 degrees Celsius? We're using the Celsius thermometer, and so here's -5, here's the 0, and oh, by the way, usually on a thermometer, the little markings go by 2 degrees, so you'll have to count by 2s most of the time, not all the time. But -5 is going to be right in here. There's -5, and -10 is right here. So -10 is definitely way colder. It is a smaller number than -5. You try this one. What's colder, -1 degree Celsius or -14 degrees Celsius? If you said -14, you would be correct. That is colder. It's further below 0. -1, here's our 0 point. So -1 is going to be right about there. -14, here's -10, -12, -14 is going to be right about there. So -14 is further down, further below, so it is going to be colder. We can also express changes with positive and negative numbers. Let's look at the following. Mr. Nutty lost 6 pounds in the spring. So if he lost weight, we're going to put a minus sign, kind of like subtraction, and the number. And I'm just going to write my shorthand for pounds. If you gain weight, you're adding it on. And it's also the same maybe in football, if you've ever heard this. The Packers gained 6 yards. If you gain something, that's adding. If you lose something in football, it's a penalty. The Vikings had a 15-yard penalty. Oh, those Vikings. So you would take away or put a little minus sign in front of it. All right, I have one final one for you today. Some Minnesota history. The greatest 24-hour temperature change in Minnesota was in Lamberton in Redwood County on April 3rd, 1982. Assume the high temperature that day was 64 degrees Fahrenheit before the temperature dropped 71 degrees Fahrenheit. What did the temperature drop to? So if we're dropping, that means we're going to be going negative in the subtract. We have to subtract, so we're going backwards, okay? Because we're subtracting. So we are starting off that day at 64 degrees. That was the high temperature. That's the warmest it got, okay? And then the temperature dropped 71 degrees. So we're going backwards in the temperature department. So we're going to subtract 71 degrees. Now in the past when I've told you to subtract, I've always told you to put the bigger number on top. But this case is different because we're actually falling 71 degrees, and just looking at this, we're expecting to go into negative number territory because we're trying to find out what did the temperature drop to. So we're going to use a number line to figure this out, and we're going to start down below. Remember that we started at 64 degrees and it dropped 71. So I'm going to count by tens. The 54, that's 10, 44, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So far I've dropped, I've gone backwards 60 degrees. I'm at 4 now. Watch what happens. I'm going to count 10 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going to put me at 70. So notice that my 4 minus 10 got me to -6. That's 70. Now I need one more. So my final answer, what the temperature dropped to, would be -7. Yikes, that's cold.